Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday stream.
We're here today to talk about capture cards and next gen systems. Yeah, we're here to talk about those launches and kind of what that means for everybody because there's a lot of like looming questions on like devices that are compatible with these systems. Questions on like resolutions and frame rate support and all that fun stuff. And so we thought we would do a just kind of a general AMA so we can get all that, get all those questions answered and just basically chill and have fun. That's what this is
Yeah,
all about, right?
'cause I think this is the first console generation in a while that has really introduced a lot of new technologies when it comes to the display outputs, right? You have the PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S being able to do crazy things like 4K at 120 hertz and with HDR, and you have all these HDMI 2.1 features as part of that. And what about lower resolutions? What about 1440p? Keeping up with PC monitors and all these things. And then the optical port is gone. Okay, so what do you do if you still want to hear chat, but you want to capture, but you want to do this and that? So that's all the stuff we're going to be talking about today, which is all extremely exciting. Yeah, I think we
Yeah.
can get right into it. The first
Yeah, for
topic
sure.
that we can talk about is and I think this is probably one of the most exciting and biggest ones, is the 120 hertz output from both of the new consoles, right? And so the question has become, okay, so which of my, which Elgato capture cards support 120 hertz? And there's also the distinction that you have to make between capturing and pass through. Because the pass through going through the capture card to a TV or monitor, and the capture going into software to record it or to stream it. And at this point, right now, the only capture card that we have that will take in, so pass through and capture at 120 hertz at 1440p is the 4K 60 Pro Mark II, or the Mark One if you have that. But that was from back in 2017, I want to say, or 2018 actually.
Yeah, and the
Um,
difference there is HDR as well. So the 4K 60 Pro Mark II is what kind of like has that HDR support and all that fun stuff. So yeah, and then kind of touching upon that, one of the important distinctions to make is that you want to pay attention to what the console specifically can do, because while the 4K 60 Pro Mark II can do 1440p, 120 hertz, or 144 hertz, even if given the right signal. Some systems don't do that, such as the Xbox Series, or is it the PS5? I think
so
it's the
the PlayStation
PS5.
5 can't do
Yes,
1440p.
that's right.
Only the
Yeah, so
Xbox
so
can.
it doesn't do 1440p period. So if you want to do those higher resolutions, you would need to do 1080p 120 hertz. So basically, the thing to kind of like I think lead off here is essentially, like assuming that these consoles, and Phil, like, correct me if I'm wrong, the consoles can output 30 FPS. So if you have that old original capture card from us from 10 years ago, that's the only one that I'm not really sure of. But
No. So I mean, the consoles they need a 60 FPS
yeah.
output, but
Okay.
with our old Game Capture HD, you can capture because it'll send through 1080p 60 and just capture at 30.
Oh,
So
okay. So
technically, all of our capture cards
okay.
are supported.
Yeah, so that's what I want to kind of like get out there first off, is that every single one of our capture cards and like will work with these new systems. However, the thing to keep in mind is just because there are new systems that are released with these new specifications doesn't mean that the specifications necessarily change for these capture cards that are already out, which means that let's say next year an 8K Xbox comes out or something like that. That doesn't mean that our 4K 60 Pro Mark II will magically be able to take in an 8K signal, whether it's pass through or capture. So, to start things off, the main takeaway, I want to make sure people take home is that all of our capture cards will work, but it's a the at the max resolutions and frame rates that they already could have had, because these capture cards don't just work with consoles, you can use them with PCs. So people who play on PC have been able to take advantage of 1440p 144 hertz for however long since 4K 60 Pro Mark II's been out, or the Mark 1 even. So that's like what, 2017, Phil. So that's the first takeaway I want to share on that. But yeah.
Yes, and yeah, just so to reiterate, if you have an Elgato capture card right now, you can capture PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S. Um, you do need to pay attention to what your capture card, specifically the one that you have, is capable of. So if you have, for example, the HD60S, then you'll be able to capture and pass through up to 1080p 60. There's no way to go over that. If you want HDR support, it's not going to do HDR. You'll need to upgrade for that. Um, this was one of our earlier capture cards, so it's a little bit dated at this point. Um, if you've got the HD60S Plus, that will pass through 4K 60 with HDR and capture up to 1080p 60. Right, it's got that onboard downscaling. So that's really where you start getting into that 4K 60 HDR territory. Then there's the 4K 60 Pro Mark II, which will capture and pass through full 4K 60 HDR. And then there's the 4K 60S Plus, which will take in 4K 60 with HDR and capture that and do pass through and record it onto SD card without a PC if you want to. So again, just pay attention to which capture card you have and what the capabilities of that are, and then you'll be good to go. There is one thing to point out about the PlayStation 5, and that is that the PlayStation 5, just like the PlayStation 4 and the 4 Pro right now, features or I wouldn't say features, right? But it has HDCP active by default. So that means that if you plug in your PS5, straight out of the box, um, you will probably get an HDCP message on your capture software, or it'll just blink like a no signal message or something like that. So yeah, you have to you have to connect the PlayStation 5 to the TV or monitor first with no capture card. Disable HDCP, which there's like a new menu for it. I think it's like you go to settings and all the way down to HDMI, and then there's a toggle for HDCP. You turn off HDCP, then you can plug in the PS5 to the capture card, and then from the capture card into your TV or monitor. So it's very simple, it's very quick, and it's just like on the PS4.
The big looming question are some of these higher settings that these consoles can reach, which I know like right now, I don't know if there are any launch games that necessarily reach that 4K 120 FPS. I think that COD it might be the first one that will do that when it launches. So we're still even a little bit from like when the systems get there. But just, that's the other like, kind of like brief overall thing that we can talk about right now is all these systems talk about 4K 120, 4K 120, 4K 120. We don't have capture cards yet that can do 4K 120. I don't believe anybody has capture cards right now that can do the 4K 120.
Yeah.
Um, like even if I go to like a NAB show and like try to pick up like some TV studio broadcast equipment, I don't even know if they have stuff because they'd be like, why do we need that? So it's one of those things where if you're looking to do that, you're going to be waiting for however long, because right now that's just not something that exists on the market right now. I know that a lot of people are going to be asking during the stream at some point, are you guys making 4K 120 capture card? Are you guys making an 8K, a 16K, etc.? And we aren't the type of company to rest on our laurels. We are always trying to innovate and research to basically put out the best products that we can. So when we put out a product, we don't just like sit back and light cigars. We are already working on, what else can we do to basically further the production, or assist streamers or creators of all types in kind of creating their content and sharing their message with the world. And so that's the big takeaway. We're always working, and so when there's something to announce, you'll see it first on our social medias and our Discord and all that fun stuff. But that's about as much information as I can share on any kind of potential new capture cards or anything like that.
One of the next topics to touch on would be chat link.
Kind of going back to one of the statements that I said before, is that the players have changed, but the game is the same. Unfortunately, that's the same for some of the audio, let's call them limitations of these consoles. Um, so we originally created chat link because the PS4 mainly, and the Xbox actually had this issue back in the day too, where if you're so on the PS4, if you have a headset plugged into your controller or connected, period, um, it would disable audio over HDMI, which posed a real problem for any type of content creator. And so, basically, unless, Sony decided to come out with a software update that changed this, there are only workarounds. And so people were buying all these types of splitters and cables and always buying the wrong ones. And so we got a lot of support questions for that. And so we came up with ChatLink, which simply took all these cables that people were buying and we just basically duct taped them together into one simple to use cable. And this was also helpful for the Xbox One because they used to have issues with party chat. And now they have an option where you can do party chat, uh, but not game lobby chat. At least that was the last time I checked Xbox One. So I'm assuming it's the same for the Series X.
It's
But
still the same, yeah.
yeah. So for the Xbox Series X, you might want to use a chat link, but you might just be fine using the party chat for that. For the PS4, however, if you want to use a headset, unless there's basically one type of headset that you don't need to use that for, and that's basically the type that uses USB for voice chat, but then optical to take in the game audio, because that you can go in your settings and set the output of your voice chat to like the TV/amplifier, and I think you lose the ability to voice balance the chat or whatever, but that'll take care of it. So like, if you have a headset that you connect to something like an Astro Mix amp, that's something that doesn't end up requiring a chat link because it has that feature sort of built in. The difference is an Astro Mix amp is $130 compared to $10 that the chat link costs. So it just depends on what your budget is to try to solve that problem. But um, and if you have just a straight up USB headset, so it just plugs in the USB of your PS4, unfortunately, this workaround doesn't even work. So you'd have to think of a different one, which is basically like using a different headset in order to be able to do it. But in any case, the PS5 also suffers from this issue. So if you get a PS5 and you're looking to use a headset on it, you will need a workaround solution in order to get audio to both your headset and your capture card. And that doesn't matter if you're using an Elgato capture card or any other company's capture card. So you would want to use ChatLink as like the cost effective way of doing it. Like if you want to buy like a crazy, if you like maybe even a Go XLR can do it because I think it's got an optical input. Like if you want to spend 130 on a mix amp or 400 on a Go XLR, be my guest. Like they can do other stuff too, and they're pretty neat devices. But like it's not cheap, right? So it's like the chat link is just like kind of a quick and dirty way of just being able to say like, here's a low cost way of being able to do your job, creating your content without being too difficult or expensive.
The other interesting thing about the chat link actually is that because of the way the PlayStation and the Xbox too, they've got all this new 3D audio tech in them. And on the PlayStation currently, it's limited to headphone output. So if you plug headphones into the controller of the PlayStation 5 and a game that supports it is running, you'll get this really cool like audio 3D virtualization, things that, you only have two speakers, but they can sound like they're in front of you and above you and around you. That only works with headphones. If you're using ChatLink, not only do you get to hear that then, but that's also what's recorded for your viewers, right? Or for your stream. And most people use headphones when they're watching YouTube videos or watching a stream, right? So that means they get that same effect. So they'll hear the same audio. They'll hear that, oh, it's like kind of in front of me or, around me or above me. So that's kind of a cool little side effect of using ChatLink on the PlayStation 5 is you get that 3D audio, which they are, they're really hyping up. And I'm excited to try that out myself.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that. But yeah, that is, so if your audience is kind of like using headphones as well, then you also get that, they get that benefit too. Then somebody was asking if ChatLink works with a Go XLR. So basically the way the ChatLink works is it's just like a fancy kind of splitter, but essentially it gives you a 3.5 jack that carries your game audio and whatever voice chat audio you're using from the system, which can plug either into like if you have an external capture card like 4K 60s plus, HD 60s plus, HD 60s, you could plug directly into that capture card's 3.5 millimeter input. Or if you're using an internal card, Or even if you're using some other capture card, it's like, maybe not everybody in this chat has our capture card. Maybe they're just using our Stream Deck or microphones. You could also plug that 3.5 into like a line input of your computer. So every desktop computer's sound card has a line in or like a mic in. You can plug that directly into that. So anything that takes a 3.5 millimeter in is something that you can connect the chat links 3.5 cable into, and it'll get that audio, which is like kind of nice about analog audio. Is like, here's an analog signal. Do you have a jack? Because this will work with it.
Yeah, there. I also saw someone talking about optical audio. So one of the workarounds for the PS4 and PS5 to get sound while getting it out over HDMI is using an optical based headset. So that would be something like a Astro Mix amp or even a Go XLR that has an optical input. Because the PlayStation 4 and 5 they both output sound over HDMI and optical at the same time because they're digital. It's digital audio, right? They simply output stereo to both. So
Oh,
that's
but
how
that's
I, for
actually
example, used it.
but that's
So
actually a good point though with the extractor because of the limitations of it. I don't know how many you've been looking at that can do 4K 60, let alone the 4K 120, but that's something definitely to keep in mind for the future.
sure. And so, with the PlayStation 5, you don't have an optical output anymore. So you have to get something like an audio extractor. And basically, what these are little boxes that have an HDMI input and an HDMI output, and then they have an optical output on the other end. And that's where you then plug in an optical cable that would then go to your, again, say your mix amp or your Go XLR, whatever device you're using to convert that optical into analog audio for your headset. Um, and this will also work with the capture cards, right? So you would go, for example, PlayStation 5 to your optical audio extractor to the capture card, then to your TV or monitor. You then plug your headset into the optical extractor, and then your capture card is getting audio and you're hearing the audio as well. And again, depending on which device you have, if you then plug in the USB into your PC, you can also hear PC audio. So that way you could get, game audio, chat audio, and your PC audio all in one.
As Phil was talking about these HDMI audio extractors, because I just there I don't know if they deleted the tweet or whatever, but like Go XLR, they had tweeted out like, oh, you'll need an HDMI extractor, and then they linked one that was like a inexpensive one, but that one only supported 4K 30.
Yep.
So that's something that you really need to look out for, is that the HDMI audio extractor that you have doesn't hinder your signal to past the point that you want it to be. So like I'm looking at one right now on Amazon. It's 4K 60 hertz audio extractor. It's $45. So it's like you could buy 4 chat links for that. I'm just saying. But like you just want to make sure that you're not like, that you get the full experience as possible. As far as the future goes, I don't know if there are any HDMI 2.1 audio extractors in existence, but like I'm sure by the time that, everybody is catching up to these consoles, I'm sure that something like that might exist in the future, hopefully. Or these companies that make the optical products will either A, update them with an HDMI in so you could use like a splitter or something, or B, make one of those extractors. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird time, it's like there's going to be a lot there. I mean, like with any kind of new console launch, there's so many like different types of accessories that kind of come out in order to support it. So it's pretty exciting to see what, everybody's going to do, not just us. Like, I don't know. I like paying attention to the whole space and seeing what new toys any company comes out with.
The key word there, guys, as as Steggy was saying, is making sure that if you want to play in 4K 60 HDR and you get one of those audio extractors, you've got to make sure that it supports. And this is like the key right here. If it says this, then you're good to go. 18 gigabits per second. I'm gonna write it in chat. Now that's a really nerdy thing. You don't need to necessarily know what it means or want to know what it means, but type that in and you'll be good to go. If it says it supports that, you'll be fine. Also, one thing that I saw that was kind of interesting from Reddit, somebody was asking if they have a capture card that only does 1080p 60, can they get an HDMI splitter that supports like 4K 60 HDR and basically get like 4K from the console to the TV or monitor and 1080p 60 to the capture card? And basically using the splitter slash switch as like the converter. And the answer to that is unfortunately no. So the way that HDMI as a digital signal works is it'll take a look at all the pieces that are connected to it, right? So you have your TV or monitor, your capture card, your console, maybe even something else in the middle. it's smart and it knows what all these things can do. And basically, what it'll check is what is the maximum resolution and frame rate that all the attached devices, the sync devices, like the display and the capture card, what do they support? And if you have a capture card attached that only does 1080p 60, then that immediately becomes like the kind of the greatest common denominator, right? And so then no matter what you have attached on the other end, if it's a TV or monitor that does, 4K 60 or 4K 120, at that point it doesn't matter anymore because the thing that they both support is 1080p 60. And so you'll be then limited to that. So there's no way to kind of get around this. You can't split it. You can't split it out or anything like that.
Thing.
HDMI scalers do exist. So just purely taking like a 4K signal and converting that to 1080p 60, that exists. Again, you can find them on Amazon right now. So with one of those, you could have 4K 60 from your console to a TV or monitor, and then kind of that second output goes to the capture card at 1080p 60. However, again, due to the technology and how all that stuff works, it wouldn't support things like high refresh rates. It would not support
Mm,
HDR. It would not support any awkward or different formats. Basically, these things are very kind of rigid. They only do 4K 60 to 1080p 60, 8-bit RGB, nothing fancy.
yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see what happens, and if anyone comes out with anything here. But the gist of it is right now that, again, if you have a capture card that does 1080p 60, then you're going to be capturing and playing at 1080p 60.
We've talked about like all this kind of capture card stuff, but it's like one of the things is, and like this has been available for a while, is consoles have had built-in streaming and recording options for basically since the original Xbox One and PS4. So it's like people might be asking, why do I need a capture card? Period. Um, which Phil, I don't know if you want to take away.
Yeah, why do I need a capture card is a great question, and it simply boils down to quality and essentially customizability. Because of course, you could stream directly from your PS5 or your Xbox One out to Twitch or YouTube. I'm honestly not sure which platforms the built-in streaming supports. Um, but you're going to be limited in what in how your stream is going to look. The quality is not going to be too great. You can't add your own custom overlays, donations, alerts, scenes, right? Having like a be right back scene or an intermission or positioning your camera exactly where you want it. All those little things that you might take for granted, those are all gone when you use the built-in streaming. That's not to say the built-in streaming is bad, right? It's a great starting off point. It's great for everyone to try out. And hey, is streaming something for me? Is video recording for me? Right? I think on these new consoles you can actually record full 4K 60 HDR video, which is awesome. The quality, and it's great for clips. The quality of it is not that good, so it's a bit rough around the edges in terms of the bit rate. So you're going to see a bit of graininess here and there, and it's just you're limited to, I think, like 30-second clips on both the consoles, but you can manually record longer. So there's some like other limitations, and basically once you get the video out of the console with something like a capture card onto your PC, you have, again, total control. There's no limits on how long you can record. There's no limits on what software you can use it in, right? If you want to use XSplit or OBS or Streamlabs, or if you want to hop on Zoom and and add your gameplay as a webcam into Zoom. I mean, you can do whatever you want, right? So again, it's all about customizability and getting that maximum quality out of your console, and as you're get that maximum quality of video capturing.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, like like as the years go by, the bar is going to continue to raise both on these entry level things as well as the higher end stuff. So it's like, um, maybe not quite at this point, but it's like who knows? Sometime during this console lifespan, there might be more, um, robust options available for built-in streaming stuff, and that might be fine. Again, it's like not a bad way to kind of get introduced to it to see if it's something that you're interested in. If you can do something for little to no cost to see if it brings you joy, whether it's creating content for YouTube or live streaming sites like Twitch. you know, if it can make it more accessible so you can see if it's something that you're really passionate about, that's great. And then like if, you know, whenever you decide whether you save up your money, whether you get like a gift from your parents for Christmas, or, you know, maybe you build a community just through built-in streaming stuff to like, you know, get the funds to do that. It's like there's lots of ways that you can sort of like build your setup and grow your setup as you grow. And so um you know, it's one of those ways that I think has brought a lot more people into our little industry to try and basically, you know, follow their passion. Let's talk about recommended capture cards per console, which is pretty easy. I think we could both easily agree on the stuff where it's like, you know, if you talk about like what the best capture card Elgato makes that you can buy, I mean, it's clearly, or I wouldn't say the best because, you know, it always depends on your situation, but the most capable capture card would be the 4K 60 Pro Mark II. And then the second most capable capture card would be the 4K 60S Plus. Why are there two spots? Because you know 4K 60 Pro Mark II does require a desktop, so if you don't have that, that's not really an option for you. While the 4K 60S Plus is able to be used on a laptop or even by itself, which definitely makes it strong. In any case, yeah, so I would say those two are definitely the most capable. And you know, so it depends on which kind of system that you have. The 4K 60 Pro Mark II can take so many resolutions and frame rates compared to everything else that like it is the most capable if you have a desktop, but if you don't, then the 4K 60S Plus would be great. But yeah, I mean, like if we were to go system by system, you know, it all depends. I mean, obviously, like if you're willing to go above and beyond so you can future proof, right? Then you would want to get one of those two top cards. But like if you're using a Nintendo Switch, you're not going to see a quality upgrade from if you go from like, you know, between the S, the S Plus, or the HD 60S or S Plus, or the 4K 60S Plus or 4K 60 Pro Mark II, because it outputs 1080p 60 max, you know. And so the HD60S will perform just the same for that. So if you want to save money, go HD60S. If you want to, you know, go a little bit beyond that, there are more capture cards that can fit your other possible needs for it. Um, there are the different generations of PS4 Pro and Xbox where yeah, again, I would say that the top two contenders are the 4K 60S Plus and Mark II.
Well, in the context of these next gen consoles, right? I mean, the big push here is for 4K 60, you know, with HDR gaming, a little bit of 4K 120, you know, dabble a little bit in that, a little bit of 4K 30 ray tracing over there. But really, the big push is 4K 60 HDR, right? And having games run natively at that. And so, as Steggy was mentioning, the 4K 60 Pro Mark II and the 4K 60s Plus are going to be your best bets there. The 4K 60 Pro Mark II captures full 4K 60 with HDR, and that goes inside a desktop PC, while the 4K 60s Plus captures full 4K 60 with HDR, but that connects via USB. The S Plus, the 4K 60s Plus, has the added benefit that it can record to an SD card. So let's say you're on the road, you go over to a friend's house, or you have a laptop, or maybe just a computer that isn't, you know, really all that up to snuff. This thing will handle the recording, you know, making that MP4 recording for you on the box, and then you just take that SD card, plug it in your computer, and then you can just upload it or edit it, or, you know, do whatever you want with it. And then there's one more capture card which is specifically relevant to these next gen consoles, and that's the HD60s Plus. So the HD60s Plus takes in it supports 4K 60 HDR, but only on the pass through. So it'll take in a 4K 60 HDR signal and it'll send that through the device out to your TV or monitor so you can play at 4K 60 HDR. What's really cool is that on the box itself, it actually takes that 4K 60 video and converts it to 1080p 60. So that way you can connect it via USB to a computer, to, you know, laptop or desktop, even Mac or PC, and you can just instantly start recording or streaming it. And it'll handle that conversion of 4K to 1080p 60 on the device itself. This enables two kind of cool things. Again, it allows you to play at a super high quality, you know, what you would expect, which is great. Um, it also enables that super low latency over USB 3, because 1080p 60 is like small enough to fit over USB 3. So you can squeeze that all in there and then you can stream it out. And so that's a great budget option if, again, you're trying to, you know, you want to take advantage of the full, quality of these games. They're running at super high resolution, a nice high frame rate of 60 FPS with HDR, that expanded color range. But you don't necessarily need to capture that, right? Or if you're streaming, there's no place that you can actually stream in like 4K 60 HDR. So there's no, you might not need that.
You
And
know,
so the HD60s Plus will take that and convert it to 1080p, which you can then, add to OBS
I don't
or just straight up record.
so I don't know if YouTube, I mean, YouTube can obviously do videos in 4K 60 HDR. I don't know
Yep.
about the streaming. You can stream regular 4K 60 on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah.
The problem with that though is that you deal with like a solid minute of lag. And I've done a 4K stream before, and it messes with you to like when you see the chat comments come in, so like like your video is so much later than the chat comments that it's really hard to like sync up your conversations with chat when you're dealing with that much of a delay. So if you're trying to interact with your viewers, it's a little bit rough. So it's like, yeah, if you're on Twitch and stuff like that, they can only do 1080p max basically. So it's like you're not losing out on everything, and it is kind of a stark price difference, 100 or 200 versus 400. It's half the price, so it's like you just have to ask yourself, is record, like if you're doing more YouTube content where 4K is definitely a huge benefit there. Um, or you personally really benefit from the SD card slot, just giving you that extra bit of functionality, then that would kind of decide whether you'd want to get the HD60s Plus or the 4K 60s Plus.
Yeah. And then on the, below that, when you step down to 1080p 60, and, Steggy already touched on this a bit with the Nintendo Switch, or if you have the original PS4 or the original Xbox, or heck, even one of the, I guess they're considered, is Xbox 360 considered retro now?
Oh God,
Right? Is it
it's
one
not
like
current
is it
gen;
two
it's past
generations?
gen.
It's definitely not. So like we have next gen,
I
which
feel
is
like
gonna
there's like
become
a
current
period.
gen.
I feel like there's a period where like there's like what's it like? Too old to be cool, not old enough to be retro or vintage, or like it'd be considered cool again or something like that. So it's like I don't know if
Yeah.
it's necessarily, yeah, maybe legacy. Sir Crust was saying.
I wanna call it retro just because I feel older that way.
If you
Man,
played
I used to
Black
play
Ops
on this
1, that little
retro
top down
console.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. I played on this
Yeah.
retro console back in the day. But no, so for the 1080p 60 consoles, like the Nintendo Switch, the PS4, Xbox One, or any of the older generations, then that is where the HD60s is perfect because it captures 1080p 60, it passes through 1080p 60. It's got USB 3 for the ultra low latency, so you can stream with it, you can record it, and yeah, it's really just the simplest device of them all. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we hope you were able to get your next gen consoles. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that'll do it for us.
All right. Yep. Have a great one, everybody, and we'll catch you next time. Good luck and have fun.